Hello, everybody. Welcome again. This is our fourth session in our brand new College to CEO Executive Speaker Series. Um, it's nice to have all of you here again. It's a good day. It's a good week to be a Spartan going off that win against Michigan. And can't say apart from the four exams and quizzes that I've had today, I've been having a good time so far. But we'll get into it. It is my pleasure to introduce you to fellow Spartan, fellow engineer, and CEO of Trane Technologies, Michael Lamach.
Hey, Eddie, thank you. It's a great introduction. So how many people do you have? What do we got here? How big is the group?
So we've got between 40 and 50 with more pouring in.
Nice. Yeah, good. Well, hopefully it's interactive. You want me to say a few things, or do you want to kick it off?
Ahead.
What do you want to do?
We'd love to hear a bit of background about you.
Well, first of all, Sunday was a great day, and I was glued to the TV, and I always am. Huge Spartan fan. I've got a Duke MBA, and you asked me before the call started, who do I root for when Duke plays Michigan State? And it is Michigan State. If you look at my wedding photos, you'll find that probably half my wedding party was Michigan State alumni, and my wife Mary is a Michigan State grad as well. So we met at Michigan State. So I'm 85 engineering. My wife Mary is 86 College of Education. Yeah, I grew up in Detroit. And born and raised, lived there up until I was 18, and I went to Michigan State. Just background family-wise, I am the product of 4 Eastern European grandparents. Polish was the language spoke in my mom's grandparents' home. My dad unfortunately passed away when I was 6 years old. And so my mom raised a 4-year-old, a 6-year-old, and an 8-year-old, working 2 or 3 jobs. And so again, to Women's Day, Women's Month, my hero is my mom. She really, worked hard to get us to where we are today. College wasn't even really on the radar screen. I happened to be, a fairly good baseball player. And through some of the coaches and through some of the teachers that thought I should go to college, I applied to a few colleges, including Michigan State, almost on a whim. So, unlike some of the thoughts that might people think that, people sort of are born and thinking about becoming a CEO. I wasn't even sure I was going to go to college. I was the first in my family to go to college. From my siblings, my parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, first person to go to college. When I left for Michigan State and I pulled out of the driveway, my mom asked my sister, "Now, is he going to the one in Ann Arbor, or is he going to the other one?" And my sister said, "I think he's going to the other one." So that's my humble upbringing. And so I became a CEO in 2010, beginning of 2010. At the time, it was Ingersoll Rand. And Ingersoll Rand was a very diversified company, almost to the point it was too diversified, in my opinion. And we became 3 public companies. The first one was Allegion, which is a New York Stock Exchange company, market cap of about 20 billion. Ingersoll Rand, which we split off last year, almost 1 year ago, and merged it with another company for our industrial businesses. And Trane Technologies, which is the company that I'm the CEO and chairman of today, with a market cap of about $40 billion. And I'll say one more kind of opening thing, Eddie, because a lot of people don't really associate sustainability with, say, Trane Technologies. Let me just tell you a little bit about why we split the company and what the company does. The first thing you have to understand is that global greenhouse gas emissions, 40% of those occur as a result of buildings. And of buildings, 40% of the greenhouse gas emissions in a building is the HVAC system. So 16% of all global carbon emissions happen as a result of HVAC in buildings. That grows to 25% in the year 2030 as more cities urbanize, as people become more affluent, as the globe warms, as people need air conditioning. And the second thing we do is transport refrigeration. So we move fresh food through our Thermo King business. Another 8 to 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions occur through the movement and the waste of food that never gets to market because it spoils before it gets there. So about 100% of the company has about 1/3 of the world's global carbon emissions to impact. And so what we did a couple of years ago in splitting the company, we agreed that we could take 1 billion metric tons of carbon emissions out of the atmosphere, 1 gigaton. It's called a gigaton challenge. Just by changing the way HVAC is used in buildings, what kinds of refrigerants are used, and by improving transport refrigeration. The whole company really is based on the sustainability story, having an impact, through our second science-based set of targets. You may not know that there's only about 10 companies in the world that are onto their second set of science-based targets, and Trane Technologies happens to be one of them. Our first was in 2014, and our last was just approved about a month ago. So we're very passionate about this. And although we're in the HVAC and transport refrigeration business, we really think that one company can change an industry, and the industry can change a world. And 1 gigaton of carbon emissions is 2% of the annual emissions of the world. That's one company. And we don't need any government to help us. We don't need any codes, any standards. We just have innovated technology that could take 99.9% of the carbon emissions out of HVAC and refrigeration. And so we've been growing rapidly, and it's all tied back to the sustainability story. So I think a lot of folks probably didn't come to the call necessarily thinking about HVAC and global carbon emissions. So if we teach anybody one thing tonight, it'll be the linkage between carbon emissions and HVAC.
No, that's pretty cool. I'm sure all the students here tonight are gonna enjoy learning more about Trane Technologies. I know at least a couple of them have interned or are going to intern in Trane Technologies this summer, so this is going to be super interesting for them as well. But yeah, I was about to talk about Trane Technologies that way. We have Elon Musk doing everything he can to find us a world out there. Trane Technologies is doing some amazing things to conserve and preserve the world we live in. So that's amazing. But what makes it even more amazing is, being somebody who didn't even think he'd go to college to coming here and saying one company can make that much difference in the world. There's already so much to learn from that, saying we don't have to wait for mass movements or stuff like that. One person can make the change. One person and one company can make the change, and anybody can climb to the top to become a CEO and bring about that change, right? So that is super cool. So going back to that phase where you were deciding whether you want to go to college or not, I'd love to know when you finally decided to go to college, why did you pick the major you chose? Was there a point in that time where you wanted to switch, head down a completely different career path? I've mentioned this before. There are a million times every month I question why I'm even doing engineering. I still haven't figured out the answer to that. Maybe I can learn more from you.
Well, actually, so there's a theme which I'll come back to for me, and I'm sure by the end of the talk tonight. But one of the things is, once I decided I was going to apply to college, I thought, well, if I'm going to go to college, I like children, and I think I'd be a pretty good pediatrician. So I went to Michigan State into Lyman Briggs in pre-med, and I did that for almost 3 years. I did it all the way through my sophomore year. And in the summer of my sophomore year, I volunteered at the hospital in Lansing, East Lansing, at a place called the Children's Corner, which may still be there, but it was very, very sick children. I did it the entire summer. And I really realized that I was taking home all of the sadness pretty much every night, every day, every weekend. And sadly, I'd go to work on a Friday. I'd say to one of the kids or two of the kids, I'll see you on Monday. I'd come back on Monday and they were gone. And I mean, they passed away. And I realized I couldn't be a doctor. And so I had all this science and math kind of background. And I knew I only had the money to go to college for 4 years. So I said to my advisor, what can I do making a change, from pre-med? They said, well, you've got really the requirements, you've got everything built. you probably could go and get an engineering degree. And I said, that's great. I like science and math. I can see doing that. I've got, sort of a big heart, which I don't think is a bad thing, which means I have a lot of empathy for people, and I care about all people, especially kids. And so I knew at that point in time I had to make a change. So I made the change. And at the time it was called engineering arts. Today, I think it's called applied engineering. Well, I know it's called applied engineering. And the reason I did that is I didn't have the time in the 4-year period to really go through all the rigor in the curriculum of one specific engineering discipline. Nor did I know what kind of engineer I wanted to be. It's sort of a late breaking development for me. So the whole sort of applied engineering, the general engineering, seemed like a logical choice. And I felt like I probably would get a job. So my aspirations were about getting a job. And I met my wife my sophomore year that summer as well. And we knew that we wanted to get married after we graduated. And so my motivation really was around having a degree that was marketable and getting a job and being able to afford to get married.
That is pretty cool. Definitely not the conventional and typical engineering story for sure.
No.
So I want to ask you
about... And Addie, for a lot of people who think that all this has to be so programmed and so planned, and that you have to come from, a privileged background, or you have to follow a certain discipline or a roadmap, you'll find nothing about my story that will follow a linear line. And I think that's a relief maybe for some people on the call, because I don't think life is linear. I don't think your plans need to be linear. And for people who worry that they're supposed to have a linear plan, I don't know that that's something that they should worry about. Part of life is the adventures you run into and the things and the people you meet. And for me, that's been the happiest part of everything I've experienced in the last 35 years, is all the opportunity and change by not having such a definitive plan that I was chained to it.
That's pretty cool, and we love to hear that, especially me. I have no clue what I'm about to do. So it's good news for me. It's music to my ears. But, whenever we've reached out to, leaders like you and C-suite executives like you, they've spoken to us about the importance of goal setting and, seeking milestones and, moving towards a particular goal, right? How important is that, do you think, based on your journey, your experience, and particularly in your case, if you did have a goal, would it have changed anything? How would it be different?
Well, I always had a goal, but it was always the goal that was right in front of me. When I graduated college, I needed a couple $1,000s to buy a wedding ring. That was the most important goal I had that summer. When we got married, a couple months later, my wife became pregnant. We didn't plan on that. My son was born about a year after 13 months after we were married. And my goal was to be able to make sure that we could afford a child. When I thought about my career goals, I typically thought about maybe one role ahead of me. One thing I always was fortunate about was I tried to apply myself right into what I was doing at the moment of what I was doing. Yeah, if I was a sales engineer and there was, a sales manager who might, manage 8 salespeople, I would say to myself, that's a pretty good life. Maybe I could be a sales manager. And when I became a sales manager, and it might have been like a branch or a district manager, it was, maybe when so-and-so retires in 15 years, maybe I could be the branch manager. So it was never like lined up that I wanted to be the CEO. It was around, could I aspire to one more role? And looking back on it, I applied myself to what I was doing, and I had fun doing it. And I think you can't be successful if you don't enjoy what you do. And I always enjoyed the people I worked with, enjoyed what I did, or I wouldn't have done it and I wouldn't have been there. But I can tell you that I didn't have like 2 or 3, sets of goals lined up on top of each other. It was just to be the best at what I was doing and maybe get one more promotion somewhere in my lifetime, up to the next job. And that just happened to, that's the way the first 20, 25 years went.
I mean, yeah, that does talk a lot about, setting goals is important, but being the best we can today, being better than what we were yesterday is also just as important. And I think you're the perfect living example of that. Um, Talking about, how uh, you switch roles, you were always pivoting as to what you think you could be good at. You did that in your professional life, where one even after you graduated college. We as college students have the privilege, have the chance to do that during our college years. So what do you what would be your advice for us students, especially the freshmen and sophomore in the in the session today? How important is it to explore different things? We love to hear about your opinion on the GPA versus the extracurricular trade-off,
Yeah,
perhaps even
yeah.
research.
Well, look, on that particular topic of GPA and extracurricular, the most important thing about most things in life is balance. And it's not like you ever get to this perfect balance between work and your life, but you're always trying to keep as best you can things in balance. And even in college, it was important for me. I knew I had to graduate in 4 years, and I knew I needed to have a job. So I knew I had to have a GPA that would even allow me to get to certain interviews, because at that time, and I'm not sure today if it's the same way, but it's 3.0 or 3.5 or whatever it was or better. When companies came to campus, you had to have a GPA above that to be able to interview with those companies. So that was important, but the most important thing, I think, was that balance. And so I didn't miss any opportunities to, I was a resident advisor for a couple of years. I worked at one of the bars in East Lansing. I was an exit host, if you can figure out that was. That was my job. I was a bouncer at a bar. I was a security guard at night when people came into the dorms. So I got to see people at their best and their worst. I made a lot of friends, and that is equally important as a GPA to me. And you have to apply yourself. I think to be able to get the right sorts of interviews. But most companies, my company, and just about everybody I know that that runs a company, would talk about that balance being really important. You have to be collaborative. You have to be somebody who's comfortable working in teams. Most jobs today just require teams of people to go accomplish something. And so if you're not good working in a team, if you're a lone wolf, or you're just someone who's not comfortable doing that, it's more difficult. There are jobs for people to go do that, but it may not be the job that you're interviewing for or the company that you think you want to work for. So balance, to me, is the most important thing. Which means you have to have fun. You have to work. You've got to meet people. You've got to know when a test is coming up, and it's important to pass it. You just got to balance these things, and all the balance you're learning right now is the most important thing you'll learn. It's the process of thinking and the process of balancing many, many things.
That is quite interesting. I think we have all so much to learn from each of our experiences, be it, like you said, being the bouncer of a bar or any one of our experiences. It's much more valuable, at least to me, I think, more than a course. So based on your experiences and all of this, what would you say are the few most important characteristics or traits that young professionals require, especially keeping in mind your journey of climbing up the corporate ladder? What were those qualities in those days that you had or learned that helped you become the leader you are today?
Yeah, I think there's a few things that I would say that have served me well to keep in my mind. One is, you never need to feel like you have to be the smartest person in the room. And if you do that, you won't hire the smartest people in the room. You won't build the kind of diversity and team that you need to succeed. And it sounds like such an easy thing, but it's so hard for very ambitious and very smart people to step back and let experts lead and other people come together, because the tricky part is getting talented people to work together. And so, this notion of really servant leadership, or this notion of allowing others to shine, when good things happen, it's shining a light on the people, not you, that did them. When bad things happen, it's you being accountable for what happened. Those things have always been, part of what I've thought about. It's somewhat come naturally, but it's something that I would just say it starts with the fact that you can't be intimidated by really, really smart people. Those are exactly the people that you want around you, and you want the diversity of opinions and experiences and lives to really form out a team. That's number one. And I will tell you, 75% of the universe is uncomfortable with that. They're just not uncomfortable as you're trying to build your career and start with a company. You think it's really about you shining, but the reality is, when other people around you shine and you're the common denominator every time, people promote you versus your boss is promoting you. And then some of the best compliments I've ever had was when I was promoted, is somebody on the team, a peer of mine, would say, you know what, I'm sorry I didn't get the job, but if there's one person other than me that I would have wished would have got the job, it was you. And that's the sort of thing that you need to keep in mind, I think, at all times. There's other things that have shaped my thinking over time. One, though, is humility. It's being humble. We no matter where you get in life, no matter how successful you are, it's a result of a lot of people that came before you and work with you. And you have to always keep that humility, that humbleness out there, and it has to be authentic. And I think that those are the things that, really for me have been important. And I would say the last one probably is, I've had this tendency to always think more forward than backward. I don't have regrets. I've learned from things, but it's not like I wouldn't have done something or wish I would have done something. I've done everything I wanted to do, and I've made mistakes, but I don't dwell on mistakes, and I don't dwell on the past. I just try to be better, and I try to move forward. And maybe I'm lucky that that's my DNA, but I would just say, if you can train yourself to learn from the past, but look forward all the time, that's the most important thing. And it's helped me keep a cheerful outlook. It's helped me have a sense of humor with people that I work with and in my life. And all that, I think, just sort of has made me just a happier person at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, it's much better to make a mistake and learn from it than to avoid making it entirely and not learning anything at all. So it's great to see, and it's great for us to see that you can still achieve many things by making so many mistakes in your life, just if we make sure we keep on pursuing new opportunities and taking up new things. And you're a great example for that. And that was some good advice that we had quite a few students ask us, how do you think what we should do to separate ourselves, to differentiate ourselves from the rest? And I think you answered that pretty well. Another thing that students here today want to really know about your career specifically is, what were some of the mistakes you made while you were climbing the corporate ladder? What was your biggest setback? Do you regret having done anything?
Yeah, no, I don't have any regrets, but I've learned through some experiences. One that was it comes to mind. The company I worked for had acquired a company in Japan, and it was one of the earliest Japanese keiretsu company sales of a public company to another public company that wasn't Japanese based. And I was 36 years old, and I was vice president in the company at the time. And when I got to Japan, the title they gave me was chairman and CEO. of this company, and it was an auto parts company. A couple of $1 billion at the time, which 20 years ago was still a pretty sizable business. And if you know anything about Asia, particularly Japan, it's very hierarchical based, often on age. So the other chairman, the other presidents were 65 years old. They were all men. I was this 36-year-old kid, moving to Japan, working in Japan. What I realized, kind of early into that whole process was part of the reason I had got to the point in my career that I was, is I was going from point A to point B in a pretty straight line. And I was very comfortable making change very fast. And I got to a place like Japan where change happens more slowly, but when change happens, people buy into it in a greater way. The end result happens maybe as fast or faster, but the buy-in takes a lot longer. So I kind of came, into the job charging pretty hard, running pretty fast. All the things that worked for me up to that point, I thought that was what I would use as my toolkit going into Japan. And what I found out was just the opposite. And so that lesson in patience, in bringing people along, and in really understanding different cultures and how people think and operate. I mean, literally today, it's very different around the world culturally. And if you don't understand that, you can make some missteps. And so I was fortunate because that led to opportunities in China and South America and in all of Europe, where again, I was exposed to many, many more cultures, many more situations. But that ability to kind of just temper the speed with patience was a really good one. The first 6 months on the job, I was getting nothing done, and I couldn't figure out why. And an older Japanese colleague, just had a conversation with me. So he just explained to me how things work, how change happens, and I trusted him, and change began to happen. That's just an example of, again, it's not a regret, it's a learning. And I wouldn't have learned that had I not gone through, first of all, had I not taken the opportunity to take the offer to go to Japan with the company, which I had never planned, I never thought I would be. I mean, first of all, I never thought I'd be living outside of Detroit, let alone, living in Japan as an example. So it just sort of these experiences build on each other for the most part. But what I would tell you is don't look back with regret, look back with learning, and look back with sort of, how you think about the future, not from a frame of regret.
That's some good advice right there. I mean, I can already point out a million mistakes I've made and I haven't even graduated college. But looking back, I know that I would never make that mistake again. So that's a learning.
Yeah, just say one thing about regret though. It's like if you really do some harm to somebody, if you really hurt people, if you really do something accidental, you need to atone for it. You need to apologize for it. You need to be sincere about that. That's different. Like you should regret that, but still learn from it. When I talk about career choices and decisions and business decisions and choices, there's really not regrets. There's learning.
Yeah, and that goes really well with my next question I was about to ask is how important you spoke about teamwork and making everybody around you better as well. How important and how necessary is having good people skills and networking? How important of a factor is networking while climbing the corporate ladder?
Well, having people skills is the most important thing, and the most important thing about that is learning how to listen and have empathy for people, so you can understand their point of view. You have the patience to listen to them. You understand their opinions are going to be different and diverse. The networking comes from the first part of that, which is this ability just to engage people and to genuinely want to talk to and engage and learn from other people. So it's interesting, some of the people that I've met in my life and have talked to, and there's been some big personalities that I've met to, including the last president of the United States. And I will tell you that it's funny how they would say in retrospect, oh, he's such a good conversationalist. Mike is such a interesting person to talk to. And I bet you in some conversations, it's 10% of the talking is me and 90% of it's listening to somebody else. And that is something that you can train yourself to do, be engaged, but be comfortable doing that. And that, I think, makes networking much easier and a lot less work, by the way, right? The working part of networking becomes easier if it's just that you like people and you want to engage with them and you want to talk to and get to know and listen and learn from them. But you have to contribute, but this need to over contribute in a conversation or over contribute on a team is something that you just have to, keep in reserve. I think a mistake a lot of people come out of college, they got to college based on high school GPA and competitive essays and getting in school. They might have got their job based on their GPA and their experiences, and it was a competitive interview process. All of a sudden they get into a company and that whole mindset is still the same. And at the end of the day, it's really around distinguishing yourself as a person capable of working with other people at a really high level, somebody everyone wants to work with, as opposed to somebody who needs to dominate the work. And that's a hard thing to tell somebody coming right out of college, because everything they know to that point is about working really hard and differentiating themselves. But the differentiation is this ability to collaborate and work on a team, let other people shine. And by the way, it endears yourself to other people on the team. And you'd be surprised, how you become a leader in that team just by this ability to allow other people to shine.
Wow. Okay. That's definitely some important lessons in communication, in clear communication, and working in teams, definitely. Another topic that most students wanted to know from you is, what are some of the fundamentals of running a business as a leader? And something that I'm also particularly interested in is Trane Technologies is based, you spoke about your experience with Japan. Trane Technologies is also based out of Ireland, and you have many other headquarters around the world. So can you walk us through some of the fundamentals of running a business?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm a systems thinker. I always think about that everything works in systems. And when you focus on one lever and not the others, you somehow will have a broken system over time. You atrophy things that you don't focus on. And so this notion of balance comes back into play in the conversation. And being a systems thinker helps you with that balance. So as an example, when you think about innovation and engineering and manufacturing and supply chain and commercial management and product management, you have to think about how the system works together. And ultimately for me, that system is reflected in our business operating system for the company. And even how we think about the kinds of meetings we're in, what their purposes are, the metrics we look at, are all tied to this notion of this operating system. And that's really served us well, and it's a strength of the company. The operating system is something too that we think about as being a living system. We think about it being grounded in lean, in terms of the concept, but it's a living system. We're always looking for the new best known way for doing something, then scaling that across the company. So, for us, you would not find this exaggeration, like we move from one shiny object to the next. It's sort of boring, but boring is good. Over the last 11 years, our stock price is up over 2,000%. Nobody knows that. It's better than many of the technology, many of the FANG stocks over that period of time. When you add back Allegiant and Ingersoll Rand and Trane, that's the value to shareholders. But it's been the system that we've used to manage the company that's been the framework for how managers and leaders operate. inside the company. That is, I think, what we see a lot of competitors fumbling on. We got out way ahead on technology. We formulated a way in commercial HVAC systems to take the refrigerants used in these systems, which use chlorine and fluorine, and remove them for these next generation olefin-based refrigerants. And inherently, they're less environmentally efficient. They're less efficient in systems by the nature of the refrigerants. So we found a way to make them more energy efficient than the bad refrigerants. So now we have this really green technology with refrigerants. We have the most energy efficient systems in the world. And our share price took off. And our growth took off. Actually, our growth took off and our share price took off. Our competitors now are trying to catch up in innovation. And what they're doing is they're pulling this lever on cost savings to generate enough productivity and cash to go put it into innovation. Well, you can't start and stop innovation. You can't start and stop acquisitions. You can't start and stop productivity, right? It's something that constantly has to be happening. And you can think about it as a muscle. If all you're using is your right arm, right, and you never use your left arm, well, I mean, I guarantee your left arm is going to be strong. It's going to be weaker than your right arm. And so that's what we see a lot of our competitors, doing. And now when we see that, it's almost a good thing for us because we know that competitor A is going to be focused on cost, and competitor B is going to be using a lot of cash to catch up on technology or innovation. And all we want to do is continue to run the same operating system that we've been running. So it actually shows up in the way even my calendar looks. My calendar is based on all of the things that would transpire around the operating system. So monthly operating reviews, daily bookings reviews, quarterly operating reviews, quarterly innovation reviews. There's this constant cadence of being attentive to all the things that make our operating system work. So we're never focusing only on one thing.
That's super cool. So something I picked up from what this experience that you shared, and your entire career journey is stagnancy is not good. We should always keep moving, seeking new opportunities, and keep on innovating, and that's what helps us grow in our career. But I'd love to keep talking to you. I feel like I'm learning so much from you, and I could go on asking about you, but we have a lot of questions in the chat, and I'd love to
fire away.
Yep. So first, I hit a couple of anonymous questions before I have the others unmute themselves. The first one is, as a CEO now, what is your next goal? Do you have any entrepreneurial ambitions or a personal end game, or have your priorities shifted towards family goals now?
Yeah, I really have three sets of goals. Really, as I think about the next hopefully 30 or 40 years, let's say. But one is certainly health, and I can tell you that when you get into these jobs, and particularly in the past year or so with COVID, they're nonstop. They're always 24/7. But it could take a toll, on your scheduling of your own health and well-being. So one certainly is to be more attentive going forward around my own health. The second one is we're going to put in place a charitable foundation inside my family, utilizing the stock that I've accumulated in my life, for the company. And I want to be able to really invest that back into the communities where we live, specifically around STEM education, particularly for communities and for parts of our city and our state that are more economically challenged. It's really around opportunity for all. I feel like I certainly got quite lucky in my life and in my career, and want to find a way to have people not have to need to get lucky to be able to succeed. Where I live in Charlotte, if you think about the 50 largest cities in the United States, Charlotte ranks number 50 last in terms of generational poverty. So shockingly, if you're born into poverty in Charlotte, you're likely to be in poverty as an adult. And a lot of that's got to do with educational opportunity and some of the basics that we can provide. So I'm going to do that. Yeah, and then thirdly, look, I love coaching, other people. I love the strategy work that goes on inside our company. So whether for me, that would be sitting on additional boards when I retire, or doing, a little bit of private equity work, around trying to build companies. I will stay busy, doing that as well. But really, it's those three buckets, health and wellness, really charitable, giving back, and then I'm going to keep my mind as sharp as I can through either external boards or through some private equity work that I may do.
Okay. The next question from an anonymous attendee is, what are some of the tips on landing internships during COVID? I have a good GPA, lots of connections, and I'm still struggling to find anything.
Yeah, it's been hard for two reasons. One, a lot of companies have literally just cut these things out because their business models have been decimated through this. Thankfully, we're not one of them. We would not think that was again, it goes back to the system of things. We're not going to do something in the short run, which is going to hurt us in the long run. And not availing ourselves to talent is critical. It's rare that we would hire somebody that has an intern for us. And generally, they'll come into a development program and have an offer from us in their junior year before they're even graduating. That's sort of our model. Yeah, I don't have. I wish I had some really good advice for you on this. What I would say is, cast a very wide net. One thing specifically that I hope you can kind of gather from my experience is, I had a lot of chance luck by taking opportunities that I just said yes to, and they were risks, but they sounded interesting. And so you may be applying toward 5 companies in a particular field, but cast the net wider, see what's out there, see what's interesting. Take a road and see where that road might lead you, and you might be surprised. I mean, every opportunity that I've taken has been something that was uncharted or unplotted in any goal that I had, and I would have missed all that in my life had I not been open to opportunity. And so I would just say, if you're having trouble within a particular, narrow set of targets, really expand it. And even if you do an unpaid internship with the company that you want to get to know if it's what you want to go do, and get to know a little bit about the culture of the company, which you'll pick up a lot, particularly in a non-COVID world. It's hard in a COVID world to understand cultures of companies, but you'll find that that's really important. And you want to establish as quickly as you can whether there's a cultural fit for you and that company. Cultural meaning, are you comfortable in the company, right? Does this company act and behave the way you think, in your mind that people should behave and organizations should behave? And that's what keeps people in. Culture of companies, including the people you work with, are even bigger determinants of you staying in a company than what the company actually does. Cast a wide net.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, now I will ask our people who've asked the questions to unmute themselves. So first up, we have Mariam.
Hi, my name is Miriam. I'm a sophomore, actually in applied engineering sciences, and I'll be interning with Trane Technologies this upcoming summer. So I'm
awesome.
Super excited, and it's
where,
great.
Where are you going to be?
I'm going to be in Columbia, South Carolina.
Ah, right down the road.
Yeah. My
awesome.
question is, in terms of like climbing the corporate ladder and getting promoted, is getting like a master's and like an MBA or any type of related master's like kind of a crucial part that's important, like it's kind of a requirement, or is it more important, like on terms of your network and your experience?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I have three sons. They're 33, 31, 26. And invariably, as they've been out of school 5 to 7 years, they've actually gone back and got their MBAs. There are two engineers, and one was a football player that was a kinesiology major. But the real motivation, I think, at the end of the day is when you get out into the work world, in a role, particularly if you're in an engineering or operating role, it can feel fairly narrow over time in terms of your exposure to human resources issue or finance or product management, innovation, those sorts of things. What I like is when somebody would work 5 to 7 years and go back and get like a weekend or a nighttime MBA, learn from the cohort of students you're with. The faculty kind of treats you different because you've got some work experience, and it's a lot about facilitating the conversation. But for most people, I think there'll come a point where if you become a little bit intellectually bored with what you're doing, it's a great segue. And I think that it does create an opportunity, all things being equal, to go do different things in your career. And I also think that a lot of people, particularly with engineering degrees, that get an MBA, will use that opportunity over a short period of time after the MBA to reset kind of what they want to do in their career, maybe from an engineering operations standpoint into a strategy or product management or commercial opportunity, and and those are good things to do. So I would say if you can do that 5 7 years after graduation, you'll get a lot more out of it than you would if you went right away. And I'm
Awesome.
not sure that you would get any more out of it than going full-time. Full-time, to me, unless you absolutely want to totally do a reset and start with a brand new company. But economically, between what you pay and what you lose in terms of working, I don't know that you really ever make up the economics of that. So I like what's happening with some of the weekend and distance MBAs from good schools.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, look forward to seeing you in Columbia.
Yeah, I'm super excited.
Thanks, Miriam. Bouncing off of that, I want you to talk a little bit more about, the MBA. The MBA is sort of tabooed, especially, for engineering majors to just get a degree to climb the corporate ladder, or, as an essential for, holding a leadership position in a company someday. Can you talk to us about exactly what the MBA did? Like, what did you gain out of the MBA, and what we should be pursuing in MBA for, in case we choose to?
Yeah, look, at my case, I was already a vice president. I had, an organization of 36,000 people working for me at that time. I didn't need an MBA. I was a bit intellectually bored, and I felt like the world, had sort of moved very quickly. And I was so consumed by what I was doing in my role that I would, value the learning experience outside the company. I did it as a personal development. And I would say, more than thinking about climbing the corporate ladder, if you can think about it as trying to, from a personal development standpoint, just round yourself out, because it will help you with, running your own family finance, running your own investment portfolio, understanding more of what's happening in the world geopolitically. All these things, I think, happen. Of course, you'll meet great people through that process as well. So that would be part of the rationale. I tell you to go ahead and and do that. But honestly, would just say, don't think about it so much as a necessity to climb the corporate ladder. I work with plenty of people, and we promote plenty of people that don't have an MBA. And it doesn't really enter into the conversation. It's only after, you've kind of selected the person that you recognize, oh, they've got an MBA from so and so, or I mean, you may know that if it's an outside candidate coming in, you're looking at a resume. But from an internal perspective, I don't think that I can ever remember anybody being promoted because we thought they had an MBA.
That's a lot of insight. Thank you. Okay, next up we have Matthew.
Hi there. I'm Matthew Good,
Hey, Matthew.
senior mechanical engineering
Hey,
student.
Matthew.
I was a co-op at Ingersoll Rand in 2019 in Davidson.
All right. Nice. So you were actually with Ingersoll Rand before the split, before the Trane Technologies split.
Yep. Yeah, my boss was kind of dealing with all that, so it was interesting to see how that all worked out.
Great. Where were you working? What part of the company?
I worked for Mark McIlrath in kind of an advanced manufacturing group.
Yeah, he's a smart guy.
Yeah, he was awesome. So what was a key experience kind of more early on in your career that led you to a more executive leadership position?
Yeah, I was working in one division of the company, and we were starting up a completely new division out of scratch. And somebody thought that I could be good doing that. It was, going from something that I was pretty good at, and been kind of growing through, sort of progressions in that particular business to a completely new business, startup, high risk. And I took the job partly because I liked the guy that I was working for. And 2 or 3 days after I got there, I was in an airport in Seattle and he was in Atlanta, and he called me to tell me he was leaving the company. So now I'm really out there with brand new business, nobody I know, just myself and a team of people that was around me and the people that were part of my team to go make it work. That was something that I think, first of all, was saying yes to a risk, and second, it was really focusing on that job. Like, this goes back to not looking too far ahead of what you're doing, because you won't be paying attention to what you should be doing. And we really knocked it out of the park. I want to say the division grew from 0 to 100 billion, 0 to about $1 billion. Over a 4-year period. And that kind of launched another opportunity to do something completely different again. So I had no automotive experience. And the same company that I worked for, this was never changing companies to this point, offered me the opportunity to run the European, Asian, European, Middle East, Latin American automotive part of the company, which was a really big part of the company. And I had no automotive experience whatsoever. I had really no manufacturing experience whatsoever. I said yes to that. And it took me to Japan, China, and Germany, which I never would have thought that was in the cards. And ultimately, got really comfortable, with really big sort of industry change, and realized that the skill set was pretty transportable. I mean, one thing, when Adi asked me like what some of the qualities would be, I mean, curiosity has always been an asset for me. I mean, I'm curious about people, I'm curious about businesses, I'm curious about, you and what you're doing. And when you're curious, you tend to like really learn and I think retain a little bit better, kind of what's going on around you. So I've been able to learn new businesses pretty quickly and get in the groove in a relatively short period of time. Very fortunate that I always have tried to surround myself with people that really knew the business. I mean, I wasn't going into this automotive opportunity without somebody who was an absolute expert in manufacturing, as an example, right? And then I realized that my job for the next 6 months to a year was to learn the remedial part of what he knew, let alone become competent at it. But then, 10, 15, 20 years later, you realize that you do have a lot of competency in this area, but it was by virtue of taking the opportunity, which is way outside of anything that would have fit my resume to that point in time. So this notion about taking chances and risks, doing what sounds exciting to you, I think it's a fun way to build your career. It is riskier, right? I mean, you could fail and flop. You have to not be running from something. You need to be running to something. It's something that you really want to do. So if your motives are good around that, and you've got good curiosity around, what it is that you're going to be doing and interest in what you're going to be doing, I think the odds, are high for all of us, to be successful if in fact you take these opportunities.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Anthony.
Yep, we're rounding up at 8 o'clock, so we'll take one more question from Ross.
Hello, Mr. Lamach. I was with the group last year that.
Hey, I'm just Mike Ross.
Okay, sure. I was with the group last year that showed up to Ingersoll and then left when it was Trane. So that was kind of interesting to see now. My question is, for somebody who's coming in with relatively little experience, when you remember an intern who did an outstanding job, was it because they went above and beyond, or was it because they stuck to the tasks at hand and did what they were asked to do? How can I go into a job as an intern and make a lasting impression?
Yeah, it's because they were nice people. that's what that's just an intern, right? It's somebody that is just genuinely engaging, somebody who is uplifting to be around, somebody who's putting energy into a space versus pulling energy out of the space. I mean, that's the things that you remember about interns. It's not necessarily what project you were working on. It's it's a smile. It's somebody who is visibly enjoying what they're doing. Somebody that people enjoyed working with. Those are the things that make a difference. So sorry if I'm bursting any bubbles here, right? Because I know you do good work when you intern. I know they're good projects, but the reality is you're getting to know the company's getting to know you, and it's really based on your long-term potential. It's not just really based on the project per se. So it's there's a lot more qualitative feedback that goes into that quantitative feedback that you might have associated the job with. That's my experience.
Interesting to hear. That wasn't exactly what I was expecting. So good.
Probably this whole conversation wasn't what anybody was expecting, which is my point, really, right? So Eddie said, "Hey, be real, tell the truth, be transparent." Look, I didn't have a plan. I didn't have college in my sights. I loved what I did. I tried to look maybe one step ahead of where I was. I never got too far ahead of myself. It's not, yes, there's some luck involved in all this as well. But I also took advantage of opportunities and said yes to things that were out of my comfort zone a lot. And my wife moved 14 times with 3 children, so look, from a partner and spouse standpoint, it's hard, depending on what your situation is, what your partner or spouse does. I mean, it's a balancing act. So I don't take it for granted that I couldn't have done any of these things, right, without my wife, my partner, 35 years being agreeable to let me go out and take a chance.
Remind me, Mike, next time I speak to you, I should take some advice from you about how to find the right partner as well.
Well, you're wearing a pink shirt, and your introduction was spot on. So if you don't get a few dates after this, Adi, I don't know.
I mean, but
you got some seriously great. You have some seriously great hair. I want to note that, right?
Thank you so much.
I need more of that.
But honestly, thank you so much for your time today. And just like we wanted you to be real, transparent, and some hard, cold advice, we got all of that. And for me personally, I feel like I learned so much from this session. So I'm really, really grateful for your time and everything that you put into the session today. So thank you so much. I want to be conscious of your time. We're already 1 minute past, so I'm grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. I love talking to you guys. Want to wish you all luck. Go green.
Go white.